What if you could literally and legally print money? Thus is the allure of Bitcoin mining. For today's crime, we hop over the pond to Iceland, a country with cheap energy and a booming tech scene. But what happens when those loaf-shaped supercomputers become the targets of some thieves, the likes of which include Hafi the Pink and the Cutie? The line between clever and reckless is thinner than we think. And with this week's crime, we walk that line with a story full of risks, surprises, and unexpected turns. The best part? It's all real. But please don't expect to understand Bitcoin when all is said and done. Welcome to Capers and Cocktails, a true crime podcast that doesn't take itself too seriously and gives you something to enjoy while you listen. The following content may be disturbing to some. Discretion is advised. If you're enjoying one of our themed cocktails, ensure you're of legal drinking age and have fun, but drink responsibly. Quick question, no reason really. Are you on Blue Sky? Are you on Threads? If so, you should really follow me. I post a little bit more of the behind the scenes of what I do here on Capers and Cocktails, and some exclusives for you all, my little cocktail conspirators. All the links that you need are at my website, www.capersandcocktails.com, spell the and out. If you go there, it'll link you to everything, including the booking page to do a live happy hour with me. I typically do them virtually, and we have a good time. I can do any case I've done an episode on, or I can write a custom one for your group. Shoot me a message and we can make almost anything happen. Bitcoin is the center of today's episode, and I'm sorry in advance. Of course, I fell down a rabbit hole of Bitcoin and I'm gonna pull you in there with me for a bit. I'm sure you've heard of Bitcoin, but do you know what it actually is? It's been around since 2009, but if you're anything like me, it probably just floats around as a random word in your brain. Yes, some people have gotten fabulously wealthy off of this stuff, but what is it? In short, Bitcoin is bank-free internet money. It's real money. It can be used to exchange for goods and services. But unlike most money in circulation today, Bitcoin is a decentralized currency. It is not controlled by any government and it is not held in any bank. Okay, here we go. Instead, Bitcoins are controlled by a network of users who verify transactions. These users are called miners. When you make a transaction using Bitcoin, it is logged as something called a blockchain. Those miners like in a coal mine, they verify the transaction in the blockchain. When the miner verifies a certain number of transactions, they get paid with newly created or minted Bitcoin. This process is both how Bitcoin stays secure and how Bitcoins get added to the circulation. Bitcoin is only worth what people are willing to pay for it. It's not based on any other commodities like gold, so the value of Bitcoin fluctuates quite a bit. Another wrinkle is that Bitcoin is finite. There are only around 5 million Bitcoin left to mine in the world. Well, in the internet world, as evidently these complicated formulas that mine the Bitcoin are set to cap off, around 21 million. So how do you verify these transactions and get some of your very own Bitcoin? Well, you certainly can't solve these equations in your head. You need computing power, and a lot of it. The idea that the faster you can solve these equations leads to more riches led to something of an arms race of supercomputing, often using small but mighty computers known as ASICs. Oftentimes, miners would connect several ASICs together to increase their computing power exponentially. These computers do a lot of heavy lifting, and so they not only use tons of electricity, but they often run very hot, often to the point of overheating. Enter Iceland. If you didn't know, Iceland is very cold. Very cold. Even in summer, Iceland only gets to around 55 degrees outside during the hottest part of the day. And in the fall, winter, and spring, it's at or below freezing outside most of the time. Also, electricity in Iceland is cheap. It's about half the cost as it is in the rest of Europe, mostly due to the fact that Iceland's electricity is produced almost entirely from renewable energy sources. 70% is hydroelectric and 30% is geothermal. Cheap electricity and freezing temperatures were just what the Bitcoin doctor ordered, and so many Bitcoin mining groups and companies popped up in Iceland during the mid-2010s, including the Algrim Consulting Data Center, who headquartered themselves in Asbru, Iceland, about 45 minutes south of the capital city of Reykjavik. This data center was about to be targeted, because here's the deal. Whether or not we understand how the heck Bitcoin works, the fact that it's a way to make money is not in question. And these computers were incredibly valuable. If you have them, you can set up your own operation to churn out money without stopping. The money is also encrypted and untraceable. For the lucky criminal, if you can get the computing power needed to create your own Bitcoin mine, you are stealing literal digital printing presses of money in the age of cryptocurrency. On the night of December 5th, 2017, a small group of heisters pulled up to the Algrim Consulting Data Center. They wandered around the compound until they spotted an open window. That would be unusual considering it was 25 degrees outside, but remember, this place was mining Bitcoin, and this place needed the rooms to be cold. The thieves absolutely knew this. The heisters found a ladder just next to the open window, so they scurried on in and disconnected 104 computers, loading those gold mines, almost literally, right into the back of their van. They also snagged some graphics cards, which would allow them to do the same kind of computing in standard computers. And these guys were only just getting started. Just after 2 a.m. on December 15th, 10 days after the first theft, the same team of minor thieves drove their cheap blue van up to a warehouse owned by a tech firm, AVK, in Borgarnes, an hour north of Reykjavik. These guys were all over the island. They busted into the 3-story building and grabbed 28 loaf-of-bread-sized computers that had only even been in the building for a few days. Some were so new, they hadn't even been plugged in yet. There was absolutely no security for the crew to worry about as they loaded up the back of the van and sped off, taking the fastest way back towards Reykjavik through the Whale Fjord Tunnel. That Whale Fjord Tunnel would be the beginning of their downfall, as it turns out, as a security camera at the tunnel snapped a photo of the van and the dudes inside. Well, before we learn about an inevitable downfall, let's drink. Brennivín is Iceland's national spirit, often called Black Death, and it has quite the reputation. It's made from fermented grain or potato and flavored with caraway seeds, kind of like a spicy schnapps, and it's super strong at around 40% alcohol. It was first made in the 1930s when Iceland passed a ban on spirits, and Brennivín was one of the few spirits allowed to survive under the law somehow. In fact, it was created by the government itself to give Icelanders something to sip on while still keeping the spirit restrictions in check. Of course, the government, of course. Brennivín is famous for being paired with, I think it's pronounced hockerel, fermented shark meat. Yeah, you heard that right. So you can imagine when Icelanders drink Brennivín, it's often in a ritualistic toast with that infamous snack, creating a flavor combo that's not for the faint of heart. And don't worry, Brennivín is also enjoyed solo or in cocktails, with the caraway flavor bringing an herbal, earthy quality that really sets it apart from other liquors. Today's cocktail mixes it with orange and herb, so you won't have to down a shot of Brennivín by itself, Black Death, or even if you won't have to eat the fermented shark meat appetite. Yuck. To get the recipe and shopping list for the cocktail, you can just scurry on down to the description box. Remember, parts is used because you can change the ratios to do whatever size you want. If you want a whole pitcher of herb and orange Brennivín to go along with your whole fermented shark, then go for it. I would not go for it. No, but heck, I'm not Icelandic. As police started the investigation of the AVK data center break-in, they snagged that photo of the van. The plates on the van happened to match a photo of a hardware store near the AVK warehouse. They tracked down the guy who'd recently bought the van, Matthias Carlson, a local daycare teacher. Police arrested Matthias and his buddy Sindri Thor Stephenson, who police suspected was the actual ringleader of the thefts. They ran these guys through the ringer, interviewing them for 3 days straight. Don't feel too sorry for the guys, however. They stayed in dormitory-style cells, and their interrogations were in the conversation room, which had a comfy couch and framed pictures of the northern lights and Icelandic flowers along the wall. Oh, and a fluffy blanket for if they got a little cold. Both Sindri and Matthias, described as nice, polite, and calm, denied any involvement, and police had to release them. They didn't have enough evidence. They did some digging into Sindri's past and figured out that he was quite the criminal, with over 200 charges for petty theft and other crimes. Sindri had committed his first breaking and entering in kindergarten, when he said he experienced the rush of serotonin he'd be chasing for the rest of his life. I guess Icelandic daycares aren't interested in having potential criminals as employees, so Matthias lost his job because of his arrest, and probably because the police held him for 3 days. As time passed, Matthias became increasingly desperate for cash, and his buddy Sindri had just the thing, a new target. Remember, this was the time of the Bitcoin mining craze in Iceland, and Sindri got word that another mining location was opening, the Advenia data center. The rub here was that this mine was housed on a former U.S. naval base, and had that former naval base advanced security capabilities. Sindri, for this gig, also tapped his childhood BFF, Hafþór Hilmarsson, otherwise known as Haffy the Pink, to help out. He and Haffy the Pink stole a purse from a woman at the local shopping mall when they were somewhere around 6 years old. These guys sound great. The two of them decided that the thing they needed here was an inside man. They got their reluctant inside man in a guy named Ivar Gylfason, who in some kind of convoluted story owed some money to some guy and then got threatened and agreed to meet with Sindri twice to give some answers to some questions about security at Adavania, something like that. I don't know. They decided to do the deed on the night of January 16th, 2018, just over a year after the second heist. Because of Ivar, the crew knew that there would only be one guard that night. Somehow these guys got lucky and the guard got some kind of stomach bug. He literally abandoned his post to head for a bathroom at home around 10 p.m., leaving the entire place unguarded. After he got out of the bathroom, he lay down on the couch and promptly fell asleep. This left the Advania data center unguarded completely. The heist crew got a second stroke of luck, and the motion detectors were not hooked up to the alarms. Sindri texted Half the Pink, who was directing the heisters from Spain, and said it was go time. Sindri sent a second text to Matthias, who had also recruited his brother, Peter, otherwise known as the Polish, for the job. The two pulled the van up, covered their faces with scarves, and filled the van with 225 mining computers. The hardware alone was worth $2 million 2017 dollars. After all was loaded, the brothers drove off, pulling off the largest heist in Icelandic history. Police in Iceland were not about to let this go, naturally. The government of Iceland really wanted all that Bitcoin mining business that was coming in after all. So the investigators moved quickly. Within 2 weeks, they identified Ivar as the inside guy and arrested him. And brothers Matthias and the Polish were arrested right around the same time. Ivar would be sentenced to 20 months for his part in the crime. Matthias would get 2.5 years in the slammer, and the Polish would get 18 months for his role in the Advania heist. Sindri was making moves to flee to Spain with his wife and children, undoubtedly to meet up with his buddy Haffy the Pink, but was arrested at his in-laws' house as he packed all of his family's belongings onto a pallet. Police searched him and found a hand-drawn map of the Advania data center in his pockets. His phone was seized and searched, where they easily found the texts he had sent during the heists. This time, no more fluffy blankets. He was thrown in solitary confinement for a month and grilled and pressured by police to reveal the location of the stolen computers. Sindri continued to say he was not involved in the crime at all and pleaded not guilty, which makes sense for the amount of evidence mounted against him. Eye roll. While he was waiting for the trial to begin, Sindri escaped from the minimum security prison where he was being held. Apparently, the prison was unfenced, and inmates have telephone and internet access. He was driving over there DMing Haffy the Pink, I'm sure. I guess we shouldn't be too surprised considering the total prison population for the entire country of Iceland hardly ever goes above 180 people. Sindri hitchhiked his way to the airport in Keflavik and, dressed in a black baseball cap and a hoodie, boarded a plane bound for Sweden, where he apparently sat just a few rows behind the Prime Minister of Iceland, Katrín Jakobsdóttir. Apparently, there is a travel zone in Europe where you don't have to show a passport. I wonder if that's still a thing. Anyway, it was in Iceland at the time. There was a different name on the ticket, which is why he, as a suspected major criminal, managed to fly alongside the Prime Minister herself. When Sindri got to Sweden, he made his way to Denmark, then to Germany by train, and finally to Amsterdam by car. While on the run, he wrote a letter that was published in a local paper in Iceland, claiming he had been tortured by investigators. People in Iceland were gripped by the story, and social media was abuzz with people who supported Sindri's cause, as well as hatred for the country's police force. In Amsterdam, Sindri met up with his better half, the Pink, and another buddy, Victor the Cutie Jonassen. The three of them probably drank too much Brennivín and ate at least one bite of fermented shark before posting a selfie with the hashtag Team Sindri. Within 2 hours, the guy who puts the sin in Sindri was arrested again and extradited straight back to Iceland. Before his second trial, Sindri pled guilty to 2 of the burglaries and was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. Half the Pink and the Cutie also got some months in the slammer. The men were also ordered to pay police over $115,000 in legal fees incurred during the investigation. Sindri to this day says that he was not the boss of the operation, but instead, a shadowy mystery man was calling the shots. He would say, quote, "You don't say no to this guy. It was not like the old days when I was younger and doing it for fun, adrenaline. It was like an assignment," end quote. The boss of the operation has never been identified, if there is one. Ivar, the security guard, served his time, but all of the rest of the Bitcoin mining heisters appealed their convictions. According to Icelandic law, all of the men are free until their conviction appeals are resolved. Must be nice to be an Icelandic criminal. The 550 Bitcoin mining computers that Sindri and his crew stole, maybe, have never been recovered. In an interview, Sindri was asked about those missing gold mines, and he would say, quote, "Maybe the computers have been running the whole time. Maybe I know where they are. Maybe I do, and maybe I don't." End quote. Thanks for hanging out with me. I gotta say, even after all the research I did to try and understand Bitcoin, still don't get it. All I can say is that you shouldn't steal supercomputers, no matter what you plan to use them for. And when you escape prison, try to avoid posting selfies with hashtags that use your own freaking name. Bad choice after bad choice. Bitcoin did not slow down in Iceland. Today, Bitcoin mines use more energy than all of Iceland's homes combined. I guess they're not too scared of what Sindri is gonna do next. Next week, y'all, we're doing a classic, The Escape from Alcatraz. I have been obsessed with this case and Alcatraz for nearly 2 decades, and I'm gonna do my best to do it justice. I'll see you next week, and remember, there are always alternatives to stealing a bunch of computers to do something that nobody even understands how you do it.